The critical role of equipment in survival and defensive readiness should never be underestimated. The gear you choose, how you wear it, and how well it performs under pressure may well determine the outcome of a violent encounter. I'm joined by Gerrit and Pierre Badenhorst from the Tactical Twins. This is Survive the Fight, Episode 3, Gear that Works When It Counts. Gerrit and Pierre, good evening and welcome.
Thanks, Rian.
Let's jump straight in. How would you guys define the role of gear in survival? I mean, this can be survival in any sort of setup, but I reckon we most sort of focused on a crime-related situation at this time. Where do you think people should draw the line between relying on skill versus relying on equipment? Gerrit, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Rian, it gets complicated and technical quite fast. Skill is very important. I mean, you can have the best tools and gear available to you, but if you do not have the know-how on how to use them, they are simply of no use to you. So skill without any tools, you will get probably a lot further with the skills that you have than without the gear. But a combination of both is probably the best answer that you actually would have or would like in that type of survival situation. For self-defense, normal survival in the bush, even in the city these days. I would say skill for me is first option, gear second option. But if I can choose, a bit of both maybe. And then obviously for the type of gear as well, it depends on your situation. You know, are you going to the bush? Are you going, is it survival in the city? Like that Serge course that Fortis is what do you call it, promoting now and actually doing. That is also then the gear changes. So your gear, and maybe it's following up on next questions coming potentially and so on. But your gear that you choose depends also on the situation, and there's so many options available on what do you choose. Obviously, for me, there's a certain set of basic gear that I would run with every time, doesn't matter what the situation is. And then depending on if you're going into the bushveld, or you're going to a city, is it a day? Is it potentially going over into a night situation for over a weekend or so? Then your gear, I would adjust it, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the times it's the skills that enhances your kit, and not the other way around. It doesn't necessarily mean that your skill set goes up. It makes it a little bit easier, and it can come into play in the different type of scenarios and situations that you might find yourself in. But at the end of the day, I would still go for skill over kit. That's a definite for me.
Yeah, so I think the gear isn't necessarily the foundation, but you know, it's like a complementary thing. I mean, even if it's just a good holster, something that can retain your firearm if you should fall as you're charging around in the dark and you trip over something, you don't want your gun to slide out, and because then it's gone. You're not going to find it in the dark, you know. So it can be as simple as that. So there are many products, and I mean, it's such a buzzword, tactical. So there are many products that are claiming to be tactical this and tactical that. How can someone who really doesn't know, or maybe a beginner, how can they tell the difference between a marketing gimmick, because many things are, and something that's actually truly functional in the field. Yeah.
For me, it depends on the use itself, and it's weird in that sense that, for example, if I need to go and purchase an item, I would technically not go and speak to the salespeople of the shop that I actually intend on purchasing from. But the thing is, for me, it's always that salespeople's got a sales target and they've got numbers to achieve. So it might be that they're selling you something, or they're overselling you on something that you don't really need, just to achieve a sales target. For me, a lot of the times, and I think it's one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of the guys, is that you need to talk out of experience. Sometimes the salespeople are the people that don't have the actual experience of how the item operate in the field or in the use itself, and they reading it from a manual or from whatever system they can get the info from. So for me, it's always like trying to speak to somebody that's got field experience in whichever item it is. Is it a red dot? Is it a rifle scope? Whatever the case might be, even a belt, is to chat to people that either been using an item for a while, and then try and chat to people that's got experience in I want to say, in the environment that you end up using that item. And let's say, for example, we talk about a belt. Is it an EDC belt? Is it a go-to belt or battle belt? What's the intended use of that? Because that will determine what type of belt that you end up going for anyway. So my advice to guys is always like, just chat to somebody that knows what they're talking about and that's got some experience in that, because that immediately, I want to say, stops a lot of people buying stuff that at the end of the day they're going to realize when they get on the range that, listen, this is not what I needed in the first place anyway.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was about to say also that, from, let's call it, from a newbie side, you actually won't know the difference what you need. And I think that for me is where the loan operator course, for instance, is so well written and being applied and introduced into the market, where, I mean, one of the things that all the instructors, for instance, would say to the people is, on the WhatsApp groups and so on, is that, but listen, say for instance, I've got a night shoot now where you are taught how to operate a flashlight at night now for self-defense. I don't have a flashlight. What flashlight do I need to go buy now? Everybody wants to buy the most lumens, the most tactical, and it needs to be obviously the best of the best of the best flashlight that you can. Yes. And I think this is usually where it comes in. It says, no, go to the range the evening when you've got that class, and use the flashlight that you have got. There will be many flashlights that every other person on the class is actually using that evening. You will see out of experience from the instructors and the other class students as well, what works and what does not work. You will see the finer details of actually which ones is best. Does it need to have a hard click, a silent click? Does it need to have a button on the side, at the back? What works best for whatever position and circumstance? Then once you have done the module, for instance, then you will know actually, I need this type of flashlight because this is what I like. This is what works for me because I've played around with one or two of the other students' flashlights. This is what I want.
That makes sense. I think that would be a sensible approach rather than just charging in and buying stuff left, right, and center because it looks cool. In that respect, it can be a little bit like cycling gear, where you buy the 200,000 Rand bicycle, but you can't cycle the what's this 94F 94.7.
94.7.
Yes, yeah.
It's like trying to do a 94.7 with a mountain bike instead of a road bike.
Yeah, well, I mean, you go and buy the most expensive bike on the market because you can afford it, and then 20 clicks in, you just can't, and you just sit next to the road waiting for somebody to come and help you. You know, it doesn't. It's a bit silly. You need to know what you're spending the money on. So, talking to people who know what is going on makes a lot of sense to me. So, I want to expand on that and talk a little bit about personal setup, which obviously differs vastly from person to person, or it can differ vastly. How do small adjustments like something silly like holster height or a pouch placement on a vest, or even a sling where you adjust this, where you attach the sling, things like that, how does it affect performance under pressure?
It majorly does. What I've seen, for example, a lot of the times when we've got students on the range, even for example, like on carbine, when do you want to attach your sling on the front of your firearm, or do you want to put it just in front of your mag well, or on the back, or right at the back of your stock? All those things change when the scenarios change and the movements and that kind of stuff plays a massive role. And I think it's almost to that setup where, for example, I learned, listen, I want one in front, one just in front of my mag well, and then just behind my stock, because that's what's working a lot easier for me. Other guys might have a different opinion, but at the end of the day, that's what's working for me. Instead of just going, guys, this is your options. We train you this way, and that's the only way that there is to go. It doesn't work that way. Same principle applies for me when it comes to EDC. When you talk about knives and everybody's got, oh, I've got a pocket knife, or I've got a push knife, or I've got a gambit, or whatever the case might be, again, preference and choice plays such a massive role. Same for holsters. Are you getting 2 extra mags? Are you getting 1 extra mag? Are you running it horizontally? Are you running it vertically? Are you appendix carry? Are you strong carry? Are you even behind the back carry? Because, I mean, again, what works and what doesn't work at the end of the day is all dependent on what's the intended use and how you end up training with it. I think what usually we see a lot of the times is that people end up buying stuff because it looks cool, and then they go and train on a range where they just stand and I am looking at a target and I am firing at a target. There's no movements, none whatsoever, anything like that. And that's where it's such a disadvantage you're doing yourself by not getting those types of training where you can actually test the kit itself. If there's movement in this, do you now suddenly see, oh, but listen, appendix carry doesn't work for me. I need to do strong carry or whatever the case might be. And again, it's simple examples, but that's what it dictates on how and what type of kit you should be using as EDC or even security or even whatever type of event that it might be that you end up using it.
And it seems like, I mean, comfort, not that carrying a gun is ever really comfortable, but I'll do this comfort, or as comfortable as you possibly can. Consistency, biomechanics, all of those things play a role in getting a proper setup right. But you don't learn that by yourself at home or by yourself on a static firing range.
No. So unfortunately, for self-defense, I don't think there's something like getting comfortable. It's as comfortable as what you can be or can get at most. For me, it's about getting it as close as possible to yourself, for quick, most effective and quick and easy access, without making it, how can I say it, as horrible carrying it. Because as soon as it gets too uncomfortable, you will start taking chances. You will remove it as soon as you get in your vehicle. You'll put it in a cubby or down in the in your window here, in the door next to you, or even just right away from you, and that's when you'll probably need it most. So no, you need to be as comfortable as possible without creating too much uncomfortable situations for yourself. And then for me as well, it's about learning what works and what does not work. So, I mean, myself and Piers now started building holsters as well, custom holsters. And
Okay.
we've learned a lot since we started now, working with students and people themselves as well on what works and what does not work. Because I mean, if you look at holsters, there's this set way of how a holster should look like, and by adapting some holsters and cutting off some excess, let's call it kydex, for instance, and so on, we've learned and we've been able to get some guys draw to first much quicker and faster, get more hand onto the firearm when they draw. We've noticed a lot of different quirks that a lot of guys do, but we can adjust it by customizing some of the holsters for you, for instance, for them, and realizing, but listen, guy, you want to do strong arm, but strong arm is not, it doesn't work. We can see when you draw and etc. Try this, try doing this, try doing this. Hence, we are on the range. We are both, range officers, etc. We see a lot of people every Saturday on the range at Lone Operator. We can see where your problem lies. So we can help them even with that. And then by adjusting a little bit of small things for them or advising them, we pick up and we can help them as well with that. So that also makes it a lot more comfortable and saying, but listen, this holster here, you cannot get it as high up. We need to cut this. You'll see. Once you do that, it's going to be more comfortable for you. It's a lot faster to get access to it. It's still stable. It still holds the gun far, tight enough. You can turn it around. It won't fall out, etc. and so on. So there's a lot of small stuff you can do on gear itself, holsters now, but other gear as well. Turn from a hard pouch into a soft pouch for your mag pouches. From a belt clip into a pouch or etc. to make it more comfortable if you really want to.
Okay. You've mentioned Lone Operator, so I want to go back to that. The Lone Operator course itself, it serves very much as a reality check for students and the equipment, specifically for this conversation. What are some of the biggest gear failures or lessons that you guys have personally witnessed that people discover once they start training under stress? I see the wall. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest is probably on holsters, sticky holsters, leather holsters. In a stressful situation, sticky holsters does not really stick. They tend to come out quite fast. They tend to close very fast once you've taken out your firearm. So they're a bit of a nuisance to get your firearm back, especially under stressful situations. So the students, when they're still, let's call it new, they tend to lose that bit of fine motor skills. So one needs to be very careful and make them attend. Listen, on a sticky holster, you need to be careful and look your gun for your firearm, for instance, into the holster. Where with kydex and a hard a holster, for instance, you don't have that problem where the holster actually closes. I mean, you can actually look, but it's still open when you holster your firearm. But holsters is always a tricky one. But pouches, mag pouches that also falls out because it's not clipped together. It just clips into the your pants, for instance. TQ holders that
Knee
also
pads.
knee pads that break because it's
Yeah, expensive knee pads break just as easily as cheap knee pads.
yeah. TQ holders that also does not want to let go of the TQ, for instance, a tourniquet. That's a
Yeah.
tricky one. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, getting a vest off if you need to get a vest off.
Yeah, because
Those
there's a lot
types
of
of things.
Velcro that's attached to it. That gets tricky. Even electronic ears as well. There's a lot of electronic ears that fail, batteries that dies, and there's no replacement batteries. I mean, simple stuff because they didn't think of bringing replacement batteries. Torches that was not charged before they went to a night shoot, for instance. There's common errors as well that nobody thought of.
Well, I mean, there's always a little bit of comedy involved in that if it happens during a course in controlled circumstances. But at the end of the day, you'd rather have it fail there and learn than have it fail when the brown stuff hits the whirly thingy and it can potentially be the last fail that you experience.
Yes. No, that's definitely true. And I think that's for me, the beauty of the lone operator course as well, is this is one of the, let's call it, safest places where you can actually use your gear in a controlled environment to test it for self-defense situations. I mean, where else are you going to test it? I mean, you can't go to a normal, let's say, range that's inside the range, for instance, in a closed building where you've got this cubicle. You can't move. You can't do any practical movements or whatever. It's not allowed.
No, there you're going to focus on basics.
You need to stand and shoot. You cannot bend. You cannot do supine or prone or anything. The lone operator course was designed so that you can do all these different movements in a safe, controlled situation for all these self-defense situations that you might actually encounter.
What are your non-negotiables when it comes to the quality of gear, maintenance of gear, and obviously in light of what we're discussing, for defensive and tactical applications?
I think, Rian, when it comes to I think it again, for me, it depends on the type of kit that you're going after for and what the intended use of that kit is. Is it self-defense? Is it more like a security environment? Because then things start playing a massive role from the kit perspective itself. I mean, if you're talking from a security perspective, you want proper level of protection for example, like body armor or Kevlar or ballistic plates or that type of stuff. You don't want to overpay, but you don't want to go under. How can I say underpay and then lose your trustedness on the protection level that it provides. Same principle applies for your firearms and I want to say the kit that you put onto your firearm, or if you need to go and modify anything or that kind of stuff. I mean, a part can cost 10 Rand or it can cost 1,000 Rand. At the end of the day, if it works, it works. And that's exactly what you need to test first before you decide, okay, cool, this is becoming a part of my permanent, call it EDC gear. Same principle for knives and additional mag pouches and details and even magazines itself. A lot of the times there's issues with the springs, and so proper maintenance to a certain degree and checking it and that kind of stuff, and the rotation. There's so many opinions and variables around this, but at the end of the day, you need to test your kit yourself. It needs to work for you, and that is what I still believe in. Is whenever I decide, maybe I want to try this piece of kit, I put it through a couple of scenarios, a couple of training exercises to see will it actually do what it's intended to do. If it does, yes, I can add it to my range bag or to my EDC carry. If not, then maybe it's a skip.
Yeah,
Gerrit, somebody said to me not too long ago, it was, I actually think it was Ridwan from SA Tactical, who's also the chief loan operator instructor down in KZN. He said to me, every serious shooter ends up having a whole drawer full of holsters eventually.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
That is so true.
Definitely. I've got a cupboard full of stuff that is either tactical or looks cool, or from the salesperson idea, it was a great idea. And then when you actually get in the range and when you get to test it and that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, this torch, it's cool, but yeah, it can't clip or it doesn't work. And oh, this thing and the battery doesn't last as long as they said it's going to last, or the lumens doesn't reach as far as I wanted to reach, and blah, blah. So I think, yeah, from a sports shooter to EDC to whatever type of scenario it is going to, somebody's got some kit that's somewhere in a cupboard.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I want to say tactical stuff also coming from movies. I remember, so one thing that I've got is a 1-point sling for an AR, for instance. Because on movies, everybody uses a 1-point sling. The AR is just hanging here between your legs. Now, if you've ever been to a range carrying an AR with a 1-point sling hanging here between a man's legs, it does not work. It hurts. You need a 2-point sling so that you can actually move it to the side and out of your 2 legs. It does not work. That is just in the movies. It does not work. It works on a Roni and something else, but not on a long tail.
So, last but not least, building your own personal system, from a belt to a firearm to accessories. Something that's practical and cohesive and suited to your own needs, rather than copying someone else's setup. How do you go about that? Gerrit?
So I would, for us, non-negotiables, what you need to have ear protection and eye protection. I mean, that you need on any range. Doesn't matter where you go, and probably in what country as well. Eye and ear protection you need. For me then as well, a decent holster. I prefer Kydex. I know there's other options available, but we prefer a Kydex sturdy holster. You need a decent belt that doesn't slip and move and loosen over the day if you want to wear it all day long. It doesn't have to be a battle belt. It can be a normal belt. I would look at the size of the belts, the thickness, because if you go too thick or too wide, it doesn't fit on most pants in any case. Then you need this tactical belt that's got a flipping 3.5, 4 centimeter gap, loops. You won't find that belt. You can also chuck it in your cabinet where everything else lies. You need to find a decent 1.5 inch almost a width of the belt. Decent belt, holster, mag pouches. That's the basics. A flashlight for night. For defensive in South Africa, everything happens at night, mostly in any case. Or early evenings, early mornings as well. But a flashlight, a pocket knife, or at least an EDC knife, everyday carry knife. Just Pierre, what do you need? A couple of mags? Sorry?
Yeah, you got mags, and then TQ for me is also non-negotiable in our environment.
IFAK, TQ, compressed gauze, chest seal, emergency blanket, and then I can't think of the name, bandages, trauma bandages. That's the basics, I would say. A small IFAK kit, then you can build, a much bigger one that you carry somewhere else. But that's.
And then again, it depends on where if you're going to go overlanding,
Yeah, then you need much more, yeah.
Of course, you build specifically your medical kit accordingly. But again, for me, it boils down to, if you do not have that sort of training as it is, so if you're not a trained doctor or a paramedic or a nurse or something in any kind, then you need to go and do the training to do so. And it's the same when it comes to any survival or shooting gear. You need to go and do the training so that you can learn what you have and that you can learn how to use it optimally, and what to discard and replace, and what to replace it with. Again, that's the only place that you learn.
Yeah, I must say, Rion, one thing that we must also mention maybe is, I mean, we keep on talking about the lone operator course, you know, the whole course that's over 12 months now and so on. But we must remember that Fortis has also got these standalone courses, which is not all 12 months. It's a one Saturday course for 1 day only. And I think people must go and have a look at the website as well on Fortis, and have a look specifically at the standalone courses as well. So you don't need to do it, even if you just want to do the fundamentals of learning how to operate your firearm safely, for instance. Just go do the standalone course. Once you've done that, then maybe you will look, but there's other standalone courses, or maybe I want to do a longer one like the lone operator and so on. But there's standalone courses as well where they can do just 1 day at a time, for instance.
Okay. Pierre, any last words from you?
Rian, I think everybody's EDC carry and the kit that they require is different. I think it is something like you mentioned, something that you will build over time and with experience and skill set that comes along. And then at the end of the kit shouldn't define you as a shooter. It's the other way around. Your skill set should actually define what kit you require at the end of the day. That's where I would close it.
Yeah, I'd say your gear tells a story. Not of what you own, but how seriously you take your survival. And every piece you choose says something about how ready you are to protect what really matters. So, you know, don't just collect equipment for the sake of collecting it, for the sake of saying, I've got this, I've got that. Understand your equipment, trust it, build confidence through it. Because when it's all on the line, the only thing between fear and control is, at the end of the day, the gear that you've mastered.
Yeah.
Straight from the mouths of the Tactical Twins. And as you've all heard, they also build holsters now, custom builds. So contact them if you are interested in any gear, and you can know that they don't just sales talk you, they actually have hands-on experience. If you are interested in any of the lone operator courses, there's a link in the description below. Check it out. We look forward to seeing you on a range one of these days. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, smash the bell icon so you can get notifications of all our future videos coming out. And we will see you around. Gerrit, Pierre, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.